The casserole was hot in my hands, steam curling from beneath the foil. Sunday dinners were supposed to mean family, tradition, warmth. I had always imagined myself carrying those rituals into old age, gathering around the table, hearing laughter, watching Evan's children grow with me nearby. Instead, before I could even knock, the door opened. Mara's voice cut through the threshold like a blade. "Who invited that old woman?" Her lips curled just enough for everyone in the living room to hear. The conversation faltered. A few of Evan's colleagues glanced my way, smirking as though they'd just been let in on some inside joke. My heart clenched. I looked to Evan, hoping, praying for a word for him to clear the air, to remind them I wasn't a stranger, but he lowered his gaze to his glass, swirling the liquid as though it demanded his full attention. The casserole grew unbearably heavy in my arms. I forced a smile, the same brittle mask I had worn through years of sacrifice. "I just thought I'd bring something to share," I murmured. Placing the dish carefully on the counter, no one thanked me. No one asked me to stay. Mara had already turned back toward her guests, her laughter rising easily, dismissing me as though I had never been there at all. I brushed invisible dust from my sleeve, straightened my shoulders, and walked back toward the door. The voices inside rose again, smooth, unbroken, as if I had been a passing draft of cold air. Outside, the evening sky dimmed into gray. I drove home in silence, gripping the steering wheel tighter than necessary. My townhouse came into view, modest, yes, but mine. The walls still carried the echoes of choices I had made for myself. When I stepped inside, silence greeted me like an old friend. That night, something shifted. I rose the next morning at 6, as I always did. Coffee brewed strong, steam rising into the dim kitchen. The chipped mug warmed my hands, but my thoughts wandered back to Mara's voice, to Evan's silence at the library. I shelved books, smiled at the children who gathered for story hour, exchanged polite words with other retirees. But beneath it all, a weight grew heavier. By evening, I opened the drawer of my desk. Inside, a manila envelope waited. I drew out the deed to the house on Westfield Drive, their house, my name still inked neatly beside Evan's. The protections I had insisted on all those years glared back at me. The life estate, the trust clauses, the authority no one remembered. Generosity should never erase common sense. My lawyer had told me they thought the house was theirs. They were wrong. The changes had been gradual. At first, Mara asked me to call ahead. Then Evan repeated it, soft but firm. Family photos of Evan as a boy fishing with his father disappeared from the hallway, replaced with glossy travel prints. My memories, my life stuffed into boxes. In their garage, even water had become a test. One sigh, one muttered complaint when I asked for a glass. My presence tolerated, not welcomed, but still I gave. I pawned my wedding ring to cover Evan's tuition. I worked extra bookkeeping jobs to help with their down payment. I moved in when Mara was bedridden, rocking their baby through endless nights. I had given them everything, and last night Mara had called me an old woman. Evan had let her. That night I whispered aloud to the silence, "Don't plan around me. Plan around the deed." The phone call came midweek. Evan's voice was careful, rehearsed. "Mom, maybe it's best if you give us a little more space." Mara feels. Then Mara herself cut in, crisp, cold, "You've done enough. We'll keep things organized. Done enough." The words lodged inside me like shards of glass. Minutes later, an email arrived by mistake. A bank transcript addressed to Evan, collateral documents, loan tied to the property on Westfield Drive, my property. I opened the envelope again, ran my fingers over the ink of my signature. Control of the house was mine as long as I lived. The truth had been in my hands all along, and now it's time to use it. The lawyer's office smelled faintly of leather and dust. Ms. Calhoun scanned the email and nodded once. "They can't touch it. Your life state holds. If you choose to sell, Evan and Mara have no legal ground." The words steadied me more than any comfort Evan had ever offered. I left her office with air in my lungs I hadn't felt in years. Within days, the appraiser came, then the inspector, then the listing went live. By Thursday afternoon, a cash offer sat on Ms. Calhoun's desk. No delays, no haggling. I signed without hesitation. The knock at my townhouse door came sharp and frantic. Evan stood pale, Mara trembling behind him. "Mom," Evan gasped. "What have you done?" "There's a sold sign on the lawn. Strangers walking through our house. How could you?" "Our house," Mara hissed. I kept my tone even. "You mean the house I put my money into? The house I never signed away?" Mara's hands shook around her phone. "You don't understand. We had a loan." "Without the property," she faltered. Evan rubbed his face, desperate. "We'll lose everything, please. Help us." Once I would have rushed in, writing checks, carrying their burdens without a word. But not this time. I'm not your safety. "Net," I said softly, "I'm your mother." The silence that followed was heavier than any argument. Mara's lips parted. Evan's shoulders sagged. They left broken words unsaid, trailing in the air. For the first time, I felt no guilt. The townhouse came alive in the weeks that followed. Its fresh paint on the walls, its curtains that let the morning light pour in. A garden reborn in the backyard, colors blooming where neglect once lingered. I rewrote my will, redirecting what I had left to a nonprofit for older women seeking housing and safety. If I gave again, it would be on my terms. When Evan returned, alone weeks later, apology in his voice, regret in his eyes. I listened but did not bend. "I should have defended you, Mom," he said. "I appreciate the words," I replied, "but understand I will never be treated as though I don't matter again." He nodded, defeated, and left quietly. That evening, I sat with a cup of coffee at my kitchen table. The sun spilled across the surface, warming my hands. The house was quiet, safe, entirely mine. For the first time in decades, peace did not feel borrowed. It felt earned.